Have you seen the continued improvement from Tony Muskett's health that would make him available for more than emergency duty?
Yes, to answer that question, I have seen improvement that makes me think that he's beyond emergency duty. Still, working through some of the other things and kind of milestones and hurdles that I want to see him finish a practice without, having any noticeable grimaces, because he still, got some pain involved and some soreness. And there's certain aspects of his job that bother it a little bit more. Obviously, throwing. He's a little bit more comfortable with the violence of throwing, but there's other things when you start talking about the mesh with the handoff. You don't think about that, but when you're meshing the ball with with the running back, you take some movement on that potentially that injured side. So, but definitely think he's progressed beyond emergency status and still day to day, and he's improving a ton, and he wants to play, and he's trying to prove that every day at practice.
When you look at NC State and Brennan, who you're familiar with, what do you see? What are they doing with him? And some of the guys said that Brennan can be a little interception prone, and they're looking forward to some opportunities in that regard. Do you see that when you watch him?
No, I can't say that. Obviously, some of that's going to be based off of last year, and I think sometimes you get penalized for things in the past that may not necessarily be the situation. But you can see that he looks comfortable back with Robert. Don't know if the system is totally what was being done here before, because I see some similar concepts to some of the things that we do as well. But he looks comfortable in what he's doing. He's finding his open receivers. He is checking the ball down, a little bit more, which is good for them. Not so much for us. And he can run the ball. He's still running at a very, very high level. So looks a lot like the BA that we saw to a certain extent, just in being a football player with his confidence. Would I say interception prone? I'm not going to say that. That's the guy's opinion of watching tape, because I'm thinking about that seam ball that he threw versus double cloud coverage that shouldn't get in there. That's what I'm thinking about, is those type of plays that I know that BA can make.
As far as help from some of the other guys, Antonio Clary, Demick Sterling was down on the depth chart. Where do they stand? So
Antonio Clary decided to go ahead and have surgery on the ankle. That was one of the 3 recommendations. He had 3. He could rest it a little while. He could have, you heard of the tightrope surgery, which would have gave him the ability to play now, but it would only be kind of a placeholder for the long-term surgery. So he decided to go ahead and get it fixed, which I think is the right decision, hoping that it'll be about 6 weeks and we can get him back late in the season and maybe take advantage of a couple of games late in the season. Demick, his situation is, we've gone back and forth a little bit throughout the course of our time, but we mutually agreed that he wants to take advantage of the redshirt year, and we're going to support him academically. See, can we help him graduate from the University of Virginia, and then he can figure out from there, what his future looks like with football. So it was a mutual agreement that he wanted to take advantage of the redshirt opportunity. And then Lex is not going to be available this week. Still, waiting on the results of the MRI with the foot, but he's not been able to practice the last couple of days. Paul Akiri is day to day with his knee. We talked about Antonio Clary. Ben Smiley's still in protocol. So we're hoping to be able to get him back at some point this week, and just an update on Sue. I think I want to keep him in everybody's thoughts, because again, 2 patella tendons and double surgery to fix both of them. His life is a little bit different right now, but saw him 2 days ago. I went by and saw him, and he's in good spirits, and hoping that he can be released to be able to come to the game and just see it from the press box or something. But he's doing better from his recovery after the Tennessee game. Jimmy Christ is full go, starting to see more confidence in the knee. Got some really good reps today, so feel confident that he's closer to being able to go in and play. He's cleared. Now it's just a function of the confidence in himself and the strength in the knee.
Dez was at NC State for a long time. What did you see when you decided to hire him, going back to maybe things you noticed when you played against him?
So when you go back and you look at NC State over those years, man, they would always have a 1,000-yard rusher. They would always have a 1,000-yard receiver and a 3,000-yard passer. All right, so they were really good on offense. And I know most of those years he may not have been the coordinator, but he contributed. But he coached some really good running backs. And so that our relationship started before that, and the connection was at Furman. And I know many of you guys know the story, but as competitors in the ACC, I coach running backs, he coached running backs, so we're recruiting, battling against the same guys. And then on the field, I mean, his guys were very productive, and he produced and he developed some really good players over the years. And NC State was always a tough physical battle. Every time we played them, and sometimes it was a low-scoring, fourth quarter game, or it was a high-scoring shootout. I can remember a high-scoring shootout in Raleigh. I also can remember going in with a top-ranked, top-5 team and on a Halloween night and walking out, not on the happy side of the win-loss column. So those were things that I saw, and then just over the years we built a relationship. And I mean, if you sit down and you want to talk football. If you want to talk football, X's and O's, sit down with Dez and just talk X's and O's. I mean, it's very high level football IQ. And then you can see over the years, if you go back and look at the players that he's coached, that he was able to help them develop from a football standpoint.
And kind of on the flip side, NC State has gone to an offensive identity that Virginia used to be. Any surprise there that NC State's kind of changed its ways to go air raid and go different direction?
I think just in my experience, and I can't speak for Dave because I don't know the ins and outs of his program. They also went through a change philosophically from a defensive standpoint. For a long time they were under defense, play quarters coverage, and you knew exactly what you were going to get. And then transitioned, and the new defensive coordinator came in and brought a different style of play, and then they transitioned to a 3-3-5. With multiple coverages on the back end. And so I think some of it's probably the person that you hire and giving them some flexibility to be able to do things. But from what I've seen this year, I'm not going to say air raid. Man, they're running the football. Right, you watch them. They're running the counter. Right, they're running the wide zone. I mean, they're trying to run the football. They're running the quarterback, and then they have the passing concepts. And so I think you can see the identity that Robert has in terms of spreading you out and being multiple. But you also can see that they're committed to running the football from a philosophical standpoint.
I'm not going to attempt to say his name because I would mangle it, but you talked last week about Maryland's quarterback's ability when the play broke down and he got out of the pocket. Does Brennan does he have some of that same ability to improvise?
No question. But where I think that Brennan is different is that, Brennan's going to run the football with authority and with violence, and he's going to go get those extra yards. Whereas last week you knew that, once he broke the pocket, his eyes were downfield, and he was going to run, but he was going to run to get what yards he could, and he was going to go down. Whereas BA, you got to take him down. He's not when he takes off to run, he's not running like a quarterback. He's running like a running back. He's trying to go get those extra yards, and mentality wise, that brings a lot to your football team when your quarterback is a guy that can extend plays out of the pocket. He can throw the ball downfield. When he runs it, he runs it with authority. So that's why I say the two are different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of staying on Brennan, with guys who may be kind of extra juiced up because they are going against their old teammate, do you encourage that, or do you want them to have it's just another game mentality? It's
just another game, and I, like, for BA, what I will say about BA is I'm grateful for BA for two reasons. One, for everything that he did for the University of Virginia and this football program as a player here. I'm grateful for how he handled, his departure. He handled it the right way with me. And when he was here, man, he made an effort. He made an effort to transition to help myself and his coaching staff with this team. So for me, there's nothing personal about this game when it comes to BA other than he's the opposing quarterback, and I would never use that as motivation, with his teammates. Because at the end of the day, as we're learning, and I'm teaching this football team, is emotion doesn't win the football game, right? It's a part of it. It's essential, but emotion alone cannot win the football game. You got to bring all the other components with it. So for me, I want to win because it's the first ACC game. It's the second goal on our goal board to win our ACC opener. It's a really, really good football team that's coming into Scott Stadium. That's why I want to win the football game. And this is the day and age that we live in. The kids may have that. I wouldn't encourage that. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to try and live in their world. Be honest with you, I bet you they're probably going to be, some hugs and some daps before the game because they're friends also, and it's just that's the day and age that we live in college football. Last year we played against a guy that was a teammate that was a really good player, and we're going to go to Louisville and we're going to play against somebody else that was on the roster. It's just part of it nowadays.
You've got the top two receivers in the ACC in terms of catches in Malik and Malachi. How would you evaluate just kind of the production you're getting from those two guys in particular, but the passing game in general?
Yeah, so, somebody mentioned that to me today, not today, but this week, about where they were in the ACC. I'm really not a stat guy, other than when I look at the end of the game stats to kind of see how we compared. It's a long stretch till the end of the season. All you care about is being there at the end of the season, but week to week you got to produce. So I'm happy for those guys. I think they've worked hard to be in that position. But Malachi, I'll tell you, man, I challenged the heck out of Malachi this week because I believe that there's more. Right, that he can even go to another level, and then I challenge you got to be consistent. It's not it's week in and week out for 12 weeks. But just excited that we're seeing progress. Offensively, felt like last week in totality it was the best game for the offensive line. I felt like the protection was a lot more solid than it had been than previous weeks. We did get the quarterback hit a couple times, but I thought overall they played better with a lot more cohesion, and then that's where it starts. If you can protect the passer, then I believe we have some skill guys that eventually will be able to make some plays. So I'm not hyping it up too much with the guys because I know that it's week to week, right? And you got to earn it. But those guys have definitely put in the work, but they're also getting challenged to continue to improve. And let's see, can you develop the consistency, though, so at the end of the season when it matters, you're still up there at the top of the list.
Just to clarify on Starling, do you anticipate him playing here next season, or is he redshirting?
I don't anticipate him playing here next season. And with all these guys, what I would say about we're in a different stage in college football, right? With the 4 games and guys can redshirt and you got opportunities to move on after the year, and so with him, it's just a function of he's looking at big picture. He feels like he can possibly have a better opportunity somewhere else, and biggest thing for me is to make sure that he finishes, graduates, gets his degree from UVA, and that's my focus right now. And then we'll figure out long term at the end of the season what's best for him.
With the quarterback situation, obviously you're trying to win the game on Friday, and that's the goal. But we've seen entire coaching tenure sort of derailed by mismanaging the quarterback situation, picking a wrong guy, or struggling going back and forth. Just big picture as a head coach, how do you approach the idea that you want to win on Friday, but you're also, that position sort of dictates a lot of your success in time?
No, I haven't given it thought about relation to my success, my tenure here. My thoughts as it relates to the quarterback position is one, Tony Muskett and his long-term health. right? What I don't want to do is mismanage his long-term health. I don't want to put him in a situation where he can't protect himself and he's not ready to play and not ready to play at a high level. And then I think about, what's best for the team next. And I think if Tony's healthy, then that's probably the best for the team, right? If he's not healthy, then it's not best for him and it's not best for the team. And in terms of managing the quarterback situation, I think dynamics have changed nowadays in college football. And for me right now, I'm just focusing on how we can figure out a way to win on Friday night and have a productive season going forward. And then in terms of long-term, the quarterback situation, then we'll evaluate it, more so when we get to the end of the season. But in terms of, week to week, it's more related to, what is Tony's actual health and is he ready to go and can he go and be productive? And I think you gain more and more confidence, each time that Calandria goes out there with the progress that he makes, and then also the opportunities for him to grow and learn from some of the mistakes that he might have to persevere through.
Would that change the challenge of, and I'm not saying either of the kids here, but kids can just leave if they're not playing. As a coach, do you have to talk about this? Does it increase the dialogue? Is there nothing you can do? How do you?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope, right? Because you don't know what's inside their head, and you don't want to put thoughts in their head, right? And I think for us, here's what I'm really learning, having transitioned to this seat, right, where you're responsible for everything and you have to think about everything. Sometimes I think the adults, overthink it and think more than about it than the kids do, and I think for them, sometimes it's more impulsive, and they don't give it much thought until it, comes to that point. So for me, biggest thing like with Calandria, my conversation to him is, all right, let's learn from the mistakes. And how do you respond? Like, how are you going to respond this week? And we don't know the situation until we get close to game day. So even though Tony may be getting closer to being, full speed and ready to go, you still got to be ready, right? You got to prepare as if you're the guy. Right, so those are the conversations that I'm trying to have with the quarterbacks and with all the players, and then as we get closer to that point that we know is coming, then we'll start to possibly have conversation. But right now with this football team, we got too much growth that we have to go through. We got too many other things to be worrying about conversations about that at this point. And I haven't heard anything, from the kids. I think this group here, man, they just want to experience what it feels like to be in a locker room after a win, right? And they're working extremely hard to get there and trying to create the ownership, accountability, and self-awareness to be able to, do the things that you need to do late in the game to secure victories.
And just to clarify, with Tony Clary, would you guys be putting in a medical waiver for him since he'll be out, or is that something that's still in discussion for him?
So that'll be later in the year with Antonio, and kind of see where it is, because we don't anticipate that it's going to be the entire season. With the surgery, it's about 6 weeks. So we may be able to get him back late in the season and then evaluate how many games. And that would be a situation like with him, we get close to the end of the season, he gets back, and there's 5 games left. Then you figure out, okay, what's best for him and, his future. And does he have an opportunity to be able to come back? So do you take advantage of 4 games? Last thing you want to do is, play a guy in the 5th game and he has the opportunity to and that's another dynamic too that you're managing, right? So you're trying to manage that for the players. The players just want to play. But now you have to try and manage, their year and take advantage of it. And it's the same thing with a lot of these young guys, these freshmen, right? I want to try and be able to play them in 4 games, right? And take advantage of the opportunity that you have. But you got to be in position to be able to play them in 4 games to get the development. So it's a dynamic that you have to manage. But with Antonio, we won't go down the route of a medical deal until we get later in the season and we know exactly what it's looking like, how he's projected to finish, if he's able to take advantage of a couple games or not.
And because of some of the injuries, some of the freshmen had to kind of step up a little bit in your depth, including Dre Walker and Caleb Hardy in that secondary. How much have you seen them grow, and how confident are you to them add that depth that you need?
Yeah, so Dre felt sorry for Dre with the PI call down there, but he's a guy that shows you he can be in position for the most part. He's got to learn how to keep his hand off the hip of the receiver and go make a play there. But feel really confident. And I tell you what, Caleb was having a great a great preseason camp until he sprained the ankle, which set him back. So he was looking like a guy even prior to the ankle that was trending in the direction of a guy that was going to help us early on, and then we had the ankle that slowed it down a little bit. Now he's back, ready to go. But feel confident with those guys. They're I would say probably a little bit ahead of some of the other first years. And so we were considering their production, prior to the break of fall camp with those two. But Caleb got a little bit behind because of the ankle, but now he's back ready.
You mentioned Tony Gibson's 3-3-5 defense. What's tough for an offensive line when you face the stack?
How long you got? All right, you got a while. So, the 3-3 stack, right? It just screws with your identification, right? Because you practice so much against a 4-down structure, and then you're starting to see the odd Okie structure. But when you get the 3-3 stack, okay, now which two linebackers are part of the slide? Which ones are part of the back's responsibility and protection? All right, when we're going, just perfect example. If we're running a zone scheme, right? Typically we have a particular point, right? Well, now you have 3 of them in there. Where are we setting the point? And then each run scheme, it changes a little bit, right? The identification. And so it's almost teaching, I wouldn't say it's like option football, but you don't see as much of the 3-3 stack as you do see a 4-down and some of the other Okie defenses. So you have to reprogram, and you're trying to reprogram in the course of 4 days. And then when you're in the 3-3 stack, you can bring them from everywhere, right? Because then you got the 2 overhang players. And so then now you can easily overload a run concept. You can overload a protection really, really quickly. And so guys just have to be really locked in and communicate very, very well. And then when you're doing it with guys that are very big, fast, athletic up front, and then your linebackers are very athletic and very fast, it happens so fast on the guys. And so I'd say it's more just a function of you don't see it quite as much. There was a time when you were seeing it more consistently throughout the course of a season. When you see it 3-4 times, then they're a little bit more prepared for it. But if you don't, like we went from 4-down, to a 4-down mix to an odd mix 4-down. Now we're going 3-3 stack, right? So you've been preparing against different defensive structures all the way up to this point, and now you got a new one, and you're doing it with some, and these guys are confident and they're fast, and they know what they're doing, they know where they're going, and it makes it challenging.
Calandria's interceptions obviously was part of the maturation process, but Loxley said he kind of drove him crazy during the game and called him dangerous because he can extend plays. You've coached a lot of really good quarterbacks in your time. How dangerous is he? What do you see his ceiling and potential?
Yeah, so I think the first touchdown pass, like you kind of see something that excites you. I mean, he's got a guy barreling down, and he stays with the concept, and he gets the ball and he puts it where the back can catch it and go make a play. And then you see, he escapes the pocket, and then he's not just running, but he's making guys miss. Still has to learn how to slide a little bit better at times. Got to protect himself. Then you can see him sit in the pocket, and he can deliver a strike. And I think the thing that everybody's getting to see about him is just how poised he can be. Like, he's got a ton of poise, a ton of confidence. And now where we have to help him develop and grow is to make sure that you manage that confidence and that you don't take too many chances and unnecessary chances. And perfect example was the first interception, right? In that situation, you got points, or you feel like you have points, right? You got the ball on the 12-yard line. Take a shot at the end zone. Either your receiver catches it or nobody catches it, and then you kick the field goal, and you feel good about that drive. Well, he gets flushed from the pocket. He should know it's man coverage, timing's off. That route probably not going to get back to it. Protect the ball. Could have possibly ran for it, get positive yards. We kick the field goal. We move on. That's a situation where confidence right there. Like, okay, I need you to manage that situation. So you see he can extend it with his legs. he's going to play kind of like BA with that mentality. Like he's going to run the football to go get extra yards, not just to get a few and slide down. We're going to have to teach him, how to manage that as well. And he's got moxie, and he's a competitor, and he loves to, loves to compete, wants to win. So those are the things that we see out of him. And I believe that once Tony, is healthy and gets in there, I think you're going to see a lot of the similar qualities from him as well.
Damon asked you about Malachi and Malik, their productivity. 37 of your 54 catches are from those two guys, and I'm drawing a blank. I did the math at home, but 70-something% of your targets are going to those guys. It's great that they're good players. Are you worried that there isn't enough around them to kind of take some of the load off them?
Good question. So what we have to do is we got to be consistent running the football, right? So we got to make people, fear the efficiency of running the football, because then now you have to commit to stopping the run. We got to get more production out of the tight ends, and I think that some of it is you have a comfort level with those guys, and you feel like you can they'll make a play for you. So, but there's been several situations on tape that I can think of in particular. Man, find the tight end. Tight end and a running back really is the quarterback's best friend. So if you look at football and like take the NFL for example, right at the highest level, typically your running back's probably your third leading receiver, right? Because you check it down instead of forcing the play to your playmakers, right? It's not there, check it down. So I think about the sack in JMU game, right? We're five-man protection, right? We're sitting on the boundary throw too long. If we progress to the next progression, which is the tight end, boom, we convert, and now we have first down. I also think about a play in the game where we scramble, the tight end's wide open, take the tight end, and then if it's not there, check it down to your back. That's an area where AC is going to grow just through experience and coaching and developing. But we have to run the ball, and we have to incorporate the tight end, and then the plan is to use JR more. You saw him in some of our passing sets. Try to get him more involved, see can we get a little bit more balance, possibly out there to the field. But we got to protect those guys by running the football and then incorporating the tight end. And so then now you make the defense have to account for, pretty much everything. And we had opportunities. We just got to take advantage of them, because the tight end's been and the tight end, was productive for us last year. So we got guys that can be productive. We just have to make sure that we get them the ball. And early on, we probably asked those guys to do a little bit more from a protection standpoint, just because of where we started the year from an offensive line standpoint.
Kind of read my mind. I was curious with the tight ends. Are you releasing them a little more as you gain confidence in the offensive line? Because, as you mentioned earlier, you kind of needed needed them in.
That's right. We definitely are starting to feel more confident, and hopefully we'll take another step with the guys up front. And there's always going to be situations where you're going to need, right? You're going to need your tight end to protect, and there's certain play pass concepts that you need the run action of the tight end to really sell what you're doing. But as we gain more confidence, I'm hoping to see that the quarterbacks will develop a little bit more trust in their tight ends, and they just got to give them an opportunity. And I believe those guys will accept the challenge and produce for them. But I think, as you said, when 37 of those targets are to those two guys and they're making plays, you have a tendency, at times, and that's where a quarterback has to make sure that he fights the urge just to find his guy, because his guy may not always be open. Right, his guy may not always be the number one progression, in the concept, and so you got to trust the scheme and what we're doing, and then the football will find the guys that are open.
Coach, when you look at the other side of the ball with defense, you're not getting a whole lot of negative plays, tackles for loss, sacks, deflections, that sort of thing. Are you guys being more conservative on that side, or are there plays there to be made? Like, kind of what are you seeing? Yeah,
so I thought last week that we did a better job of creating pressure on the quarterback. So even in the first drive, we were able to create some disruption and flush him out of the pocket. We just got to get guys on the ground. We've had several, first contacts in the backfield, and then we don't get the guy down on first contact, and then they run through the first tackle, and next thing you know, it's a positive gain. And then you look in the game, we had two free rushers, on the quarterback, and these guys are going to learn and grow, but, you coach them to stay upfield shoulder. And, man, they're so excited and so aggressive and ready to get the sack. Well, they don't stay upfield shoulder, and then the quarterback spins out on them. So I think there's plays that are there to be made. We got to make them. But overall, we do have to improve and increase our disruption and pressure on the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. And then if we have a guy in the backfield, man, we need to get him down on first contact. So I think that's a function of why the numbers are not quite what they were last year. We got to get guys on the ground, and then we got to when we get a free shot, we got to make sure that it sticks.